Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Chia and today it's going to be my January wrap up. In total, I read 7 books in January. That's kind of low compared to how much I usually read because after reading my last book in January, I went into full book slump. I could not read anything the rest of the month because I was so down bad for the last book that I read in the month. And if you already know the big book that everyone's talking about, you already know what book put me into really bad slump. But at this point, I compared my stats to last January in 2024, and I actually read more this month than I did last year. And I read about maybe 5 books, and that was my average going into 2024. But the fact I'm averaging about 7 books, and I could have read more if the slump didn't happen, is amazing for me. Let's get started with the books I read in January. At the end of December, I read the first 2 books of the Legends of Thesmar series, and I went straight into the 3rd book, and this book is called Fate and Furies. After Vows and Ruins, there was some sort of huge cliffhanger, and this one goes straight into it. There's sort of a time jump because there's sort of an exploration that's happening, and I absolutely love this book. If you don't know, the Legends of Thesmar series is written by Helen Scher, and it's independently published, and it follows a character named Althea. And Althea is an alchemist. Her ultimate dream is to become one of the Legends of Thesmar. She wants to be a war sword. And unfortunately, these war swords do not allow women to fight with them because there was a prophecy foretold a long time ago that women were not allowed to carry swords because it would bring the ruin. It would ruin their worlds. After some series of events in the first book, Althea was able to make her plea to the king to become a trainee to the Legends of Thesmar, and she was able to start training with them to ultimately do a rite that would turn her into one of these legends. And the first 2 books is following her journey to becoming one of these war swords and the main conflict that is following this world, which is a rift that is happening all over the place where these wraiths are coming out to attack people and start bringing destruction to their worlds. In order to help fight these enemies, they have to procure these sort of metals that are the only means to be able to kill these wraiths. And since the Legends of Thesmar are the war swords who protect this whole entire city, they are the only ones who are strong enough and fast enough to be able to take down these wraiths. And so she starts training with this whole entire group, and I love the development of these characters, especially in the 3rd book. This book by far has to be my favorite one out of the quartet because I loved the character development. I love the fully fleshing out of the world, and we get to explore different parts of the world that is technically outside of Thesmar, and we find out more about Althea's past. We have a male main character named Walder Hawthorne, and he is a love interest for Althea. I love the fact that he is all about how strong Althea is. He has a sort of protective nature around her, but he is willing to let her stand up for herself because that is exactly what she wants, and he wants to make sure that she is as strong as possible. He ends up sort of becoming sort of her trainer, and she's an apprentice to him. But I love the development of their story and how there was a big conflict that was introduced in the last one that kind of put a detriment to their relationship. And I loved the journey of how it come about, where the difference between Althea in the 1st book to Althea at the end of this 3rd book. I absolutely loved it, and I love how she stopped being a part of the background and became more of the main character of the story instead of just focusing on their love story, because I wanted to know more about the plot as well. So 5 stars for this one, definitely, for sure. And I think compared to Vows and Ruins, this was less spicy than Vows and Ruins. Vows and Ruins, the problem I had with that book was that every other chapter there was a spicy scene, but this one seemed to find the balance in the relationship. It gave me what I was hoping to find since the beginning of the 1st book. So if you read Slaying the Shadow Prince, I think that's what it's called. Let me double check. It's Slaying the Shadow Prince, and it's a part of the Mortal Enemies to Monster Lovers series. It's sort of a bunch of standalones that are connected to different series, and the Slaying the Shadow Prince is a part of this book series. You don't necessarily have to read it in order to understand a lot of the story. You can go in blind, and then you can honestly just read it afterwards. But I highly recommend to read it because there are some characters that are introduced in this book that make a huge appearance and become more prominent parts of the story that would make more more sense if you do read that book as well. But I absolutely loved this book because of all the things that were brought together to make it into one big giant plot. Of course, this is my favorite of the series, and going into it, the next book I read right afterwards was Shadows and Storms, and this is the last and final book of the series. I did like the continuation of the characters in this book. It's just that the plot lines at the end of it, where it kind of rushed to finish up, I felt like was way too easy to be finished up. There were so many things that I wanted more depth to and more details with, and I just felt like the easy route was taken. I honestly felt like some of the characters either did a standstill with their character growth, especially since I love this book so much, and I just felt like they took a standstill and then chose the easy way out. So I was kind of a little bit disappointed in this book. Overall, I didn't hate it, and it was just wrapped up too neatly, and I just wanted more grittier like ending towards it, because it is a part of a war. There were so many things that happened in this whole entire series where we felt like we were going to lose people, and I wish there was more development, and especially since it was like the ending of a book series, I just wanted more. Overall, I still gave this book a 4.5. I still enjoyed my time with it, and I still highly recommend the series. I just felt like the ending kind of fell flat for me. The next book I read was a Kindle Unlimited book, and this was a recommendation from Bailey's Bookshelf, and I absolutely love this book. This book is called Amid Clouds and Bones by Ella Fields. This book follows a character named Mildred, and she's a princess of the human lands. She's a princess who is a halfling. She's a half fairy, half human, and she is hated by both sides because she's a halfling. In order to help with a conflict between the Unseelie Court and the Seelie Court, the Seelie Court comes to the human court to get help so that they can borrow their armies in order to fight this war against the Unseelie Court. The deal is, in order for the human kingdom to help out with the Seelie Court, the king basically gives her hand away to the prince of the Seelie Court, and he's a fairy. They meet like when they're in their teens, and they absolutely hate each other. Every couple of years or so, in order to strengthen the alliance, their families meet every other year, and so every single time they meet, they end up doing terrible things towards each other. The prince ends up throwing a two-headed snake into the carriage that she is sitting in reading, and she ends up getting bit by the snake and poisoned and is basically incapacitated for a week. And so vice versa, she ends up like doing something else to him, and it's true enemies to lovers. I absolutely love this book, if you can't tell. It's very reminiscent of the way the fairies were in The Cruel Prince, how it's very cruel and very magical and very whimsical, and she ends up having to go to the Seelie Court to live within their realms because they are like planning a wedding. She ends up going over there and she feels super alone the whole entire time. She still has this like sort of banter relationship with the fairy prince. I absolutely love their relationship so much. Their relationship is so toxic. Their relationship is so incredibly toxic. They are terrible towards each other, but because of the fact that Mildred is able to play the same games as the prince, he ends up taking sort of like a liking towards her, and they ended up like keep bantering back and forth with each other, and he calls her Dread and she calls him Monster. I don't know, the tension was so good, and I'm missing a true enemies to lovers, and this ticked all those boxes. And the best part about it is that it's a standalone. So if you are looking for a palate cleanser and you're looking for a romantasy book that has great plot, great characters, female main character that is not annoying. The thing that I loved about Mildred is that she's very intelligent. She's not trained to be a fighter. She's not trained to be like an assassin or very towards like violent tendencies, but she uses her mind in order to play the games of the court in order to survive. And that's the main things she ended up doing in the Seelie Court, is that she tries to find ways to survive because she's basically on her own. And I absolutely love this book. I highly recommend. I gave it a 4.5 stars just because I love the banter. I love the chemistry between the two characters. And there's also a sort of second kind of love interest. I wouldn't necessarily call him another love interest just because of the stuff that happens in this book, but it just brings so much tension and so much openness to this book, and I absolutely loved how it ended. I wish it was a part of a whole entire series, but that's just me. And if you're looking for a great standalone that's true enemies to lovers set in a cruel fairy world, pick up Amid Clouds and Bones. The next book I picked up in January was my reread of Fourth Wing. Everyone knows what Fourth Wing is about at this point. I love the characters in this book. My favorite world. It's one of my top 5 favorite series currently, and I absolutely gave this 5 stars on my reread. I loved being back in this world and reading the beginnings of it, and the losses that we have in this book, it just broke my heart just as much as the first time that I read it. I love seeing how the beginnings of the characters before they delved into more of their deeper character development as the series goes on. And of course I gave this another 5 stars, because how can I not give it another 5 stars? And then I went on to reread Iron Flame. Initially, I gave this book a 4 stars, but after rereading it again, I absolutely had to give this a 5 stars. I didn't understand the different things that the characters were going through at this point, because I just felt like the female main character just became too whiny for my liking, and I didn't like the interactions between her and the male main character, because I felt like there was so much miscommunication tropes in this book, and I just felt so angry the whole entire time because they weren't willing to understand each other, despite stating to each other what they needed from the relationship, and neither one of them were willing to bend in order to fix the communication trope and also to compromise. As I reread the series, I felt like I understood the characters more. I felt like I understood the reason why the female main character was being annoying, because her whole entire world was ripped out from under her. She's always been trained to be a scribe her whole entire life, and basically scribes are just meant to know knowledge, and she has had a knowledge of her world basically drilled into her since she was a kid. Every single part of her based in knowledge and facts, and she got all of the knowledge and facts ripped out from under her, knowing that none of the things that she's known her whole entire life was not true. It kind of like takes a toll on the mental aspect of a person. She's not supposed to be okay completely in the second book, after she, not only since like she got betrayed by someone she cared about, by a world that she lived in her whole entire life that now she doesn't know anything about. So of course it's understandable that she was annoying and doubting herself the whole time. Despite how confident and how intelligent she was in the first book, it's easy to lose yourself when you are stuck into this situation. And I understood Violet way more in this book. I still found her miscommunication with Xaden really annoying, but the way that I felt like it just needed to be done because of how everything ended in the first book, I just felt like it had to happen in order for them to grow in a relationship. It's understandable. So I did end up bumping my reread to a 5 stars because I did understand it more, and the important parts of their relationship did shine in this book as well. I love Xaden's lines. He keeps getting better and better throughout the whole entire series, and if he keeps going like this, he's gonna slowly make his way to number 1 sooner than later. The next book I read in January was Heavenly Bodies by Imani Ariyu. This book follows a character named Alara, and Alara is sort of the princess to the Night Kingdom, and her whole entire family ends up dying in front of her. They get killed by one of the stars, and the stars are their sort of gods in this universe, and they're like the strongest and beings of this whole entire world, and everyone like prays to them like God. He ends up coming down because of a prophecy and ends up killing her whole entire family. She runs away and ends up getting kidnapped by the Kingdom of Light in the process, and they told her that they would offer her safety and care if she agrees to be trained by the Prince Lorenzo to develop more of her powers. And she's supposed to have 3 powers. She can be able to manipulate shadows, she can dream walk. I forget what her 3rd power is. The first 25% of this book is mainly her being trained by Lorenzo to get stronger in her powers. It's sort of a juxtaposition between their 2 powers, because he has light and fire magic and she has dark and shadow magic. So it's like a mingling of the 2, which I absolutely love. She's getting trained by him to become like stronger so that she is able to, because the prophecy supposedly is that she is able to kill the star that killed her family. The Kingdom of Light, the king is basically using her to help fight with the stars so that they can free the world of the stars, so that they can just live on their own without them trying to rule over the world. That's the overarching whole plot of this world. I hate to say it, but I was kind of disappointed by it. This is loved by a few of my favorite creators, and so I had high expectations going into this book, and I predicted that it would be a 5-star book for me, but I just didn't feel it. I didn't feel a chemistry between the 2 characters. I just felt like it was too cheesy, and there were a few lines in here that was so cringe that I just couldn't get past the fact that I just didn't like them. And there was nothing really ultimately wrong about the 2 characters. It's just that that I just couldn't connect to them. I don't know if I just was not reading at the right time, because I was going through my reread of Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, and I was still like waiting for Onyx Storm to come out, but I just was so disappointed by this book. Don't get me wrong, I love the writing. The writing was incredibly descriptive. I felt like I was basically plopped into the world. I could understand everything that was happening because of the beautiful details that the author has written and the lines that were written in order to describe parts of the world. Like when she describes foods, I absolutely love the way she described things in the foods, and I felt like I was eating it with the characters, but I just couldn't connect, and I just don't know if it was a me problem. I don't know if it was the book's problem, but I couldn't root for the two characters at the end. I couldn't root for their relationship or their love story. And also, I felt like the plot was kind of jumping all over the place. After a plot twist would happen, then there would be like a break for a few chapters where it just like kind of left it at a standstill, and I just felt like I was getting bored halfway through. So I ended up giving this book a 3.75. I'm so disappointed. It's like one of my biggest disappointments because I was looking forward to reading this. I was waiting for it to be released because it was originally indie published and then it became traditionally published last year. So all of the indie books went off sale and I couldn't even find it on Kindle. And then I heard that like the UK was gonna get it first before the US, so I pre-ordered this on Waterstone, and the beautiful edges like got me, and I love the end pages as well. It's so pretty, so I decided to pre-order this one because not only it was available sooner in the UK, I wanted to get my hands on it because I wanted to read it, and I was so disappointed. But I will continue on with the series. The next one is called Fallen Stars, which is supposed to come out in November of this year, and I'm hoping that the problems I had with this book would be rectified, because I do want to love the world, I do want to love the characters, and maybe I just wasn't reading this at the right time. So maybe I'll reread it later on this year, who knows. But yeah, I was incredibly disappointed by this book. And the last book I read in January, the one that put me in a book slump, was Onyx Storm. I am one of the people who absolutely love this book. I know there was a lot of discourse online on how the book was written and how there was a lot of characters and plot points thrown into the first 25%, but I felt personally that it was really easy to follow. I don't know if the reason why was because I reread Fourth Wing Iron Flame recently, but I felt like it was very easy to follow. I thought the plot points were not that difficult to get by, and I've read more confusing books than this one, like Crescent City, where I was confused for the first 200 pages. I felt like this is my favorite of the whole entire series. I loved the development of our characters. I knew that the reason why Iron Flame was so miscommunication trope heavy was because it was going to lead us to this point. And I trust Rebecca Yarros and her plot twist and everything that she has fully laid out for us. And I feel like the things that there was like problems with in this book will get resolved in the next few books, because I feel like there's a whole entire reason why these things were happening. I trust her plot points, and I can't wait to see the continuation of this. And the cliffhanger in this book was criminal. I did do a full reading vlog on my channel with this that is non-spoiler and spoiler. I gave this a book of 5 stars, 6 stars in all honesty. This was exactly what I wanted it to be. I wanted the world to expand more. I wanted to get to know more of the other characters, and it gave me just that. I have so many questions based on how the ending happened. I don't know what I'm gonna do in the next 2 years, because there's like constant rumors online saying that she's not gonna release it until 2027, which I don't know if it's gonna be 2027. I feel like it's most likely the end of 2026. I just know that she has stated that she's going to take a long break in between Onyx Storm and the next book, because she just couldn't handle her schedule that it was the first 2 years when she was coming out with the first 3 books. In all honesty, I'm all for her taking a big break, because I want her to be able to write the last 2 books of the series with a lot of thought and care. She knows how beloved these characters are, and we need to give a proper send-off to these characters within the last 2 books. And I'm so sad that we're gonna only have 2 books left in this series, but I can't wait to continue on with it. And this was the last book that I read in January, because I honestly stared at a wall for like a good 30 minutes after I finished it, and I could not pick up any other book for the life of me, because I just wanted to be back in this world. But finally I started picking up another book like literally the last last day of January, and I was able to finish through with that. This was the last book of January, and I'm really tempted to do a reread soon, but I'm trying not to because I'm like, I need to read other books as well. Those are the 7 books I read in January. Let me know in the comments below if you read any of the books that I read this month and what you thought of them as well, and if there's any other books that I should be checking out too, if you have any recommendations based on the books that I read this month. Anyways, thank you for watching, and like and subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you all next time. Bye. Even if you try